This happened a few days ago. I'm a 34-year-old geology professor driving through the Appalachian backroads. I wanted to gather stories for my lecture on local myths. I thought it would be interesting. The roads were winding and isolated, surrounded by thick trees. I felt a little uneasy, but I brushed it off. I pulled over to check my map. That's when I spotted a hitchhiker on the side of the road. I hesitated but needed a break. He had an odd smile that didn't reach his eyes. My gut said something was off, but I ignored it. I'd read about strange encounters but thought they were just stories. "Where to?" I asked, keeping it light. "The woods hold their secrets," he said. His voice was calm but sent chills down my spine. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror as I drove. He seemed to blend into the shadows around us. My heart started racing, but I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was just nerves. We approached a fork in the road. I looked back at him, ready to ask which way to go, but he was gone. One moment he sat there, and the next he vanished. I slammed on the brakes, panic flooding my mind. I hopped out of the car, searching the sides of the road. There was no trace of him. Did I imagine it? I thought of driving off, but an overwhelming feeling of being watched held me in place. Over the next few days I saw more hitchhikers. Each one told strange tales about lost souls wandering the woods. It made me uneasy but curious. The vibe shifted. I found myself thinking about the hitchhiker more than I wanted. That night felt colder, and whispers drifted through the trees. Was I losing my mind? One night I heard soft voices calling my name. I sat up in bed, heart racing. A cold draft swept through the cabin. The shadows outside my window shifted and twisted, as if reaching for me. I didn't know what to do. Was it real? Or was I just scared? I turned to the window, feeling a heavy dread. I had to see. I slowly pulled back the curtain. "What do you want?" I whispered, feeling ridiculous. Then I heard it again. A faint voice outside saying, "Come with us." My blood ran cold. I was frozen, unsure if I was dreaming or awake. I took a shaky breath and turned my head again. There was nothing there. But then I felt it ripple through the air, a whisper that cut through the chill. "Why are you here?" said a voice from the shadows. I blinked hard, trying to make sense of it. Was it him? Was it real? I could hardly breathe. The whisper faded, but the emptiness lingered. I was alone, or was I? I wish I could explain it. I don't think I ever will. The next day, I tried to push it all aside. I headed to the local library, hoping to find some old newspapers for research. I needed grounding amidst the chaos in my mind. The librarian, an older woman with piercing eyes, sensed my unease. "Looking for something specific?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. I nodded, starting to explain my interest in local myths and legends. Something flickered in her expression, an echo of recognition. "You're not the first to ask about the hitchhikers," she said quietly. "They've been disappearing for years. Some believe they're something else." I felt a shiver dance down my spine. "What do you mean by something else?" She lowered her voice. "Lost souls. They say their stories keep the woods alive. You need to be careful, you know." I brushed it off, laughing nervously. "Just stories, right?" Her gaze remained fixed. "Not all stories are just stories." I moved on, uneasy. I spent hours digging through stacks of old newspapers. Each article seemed to weave a darker tapestry of unexplained disappearances in the area. For every hiker who vanished, there was a mention of strange figures seen along the roads. I couldn't shake the feeling of a shadow trailing me, watching from the edges of the past. As I left, I spotted something on the floor. A torn flyer caught my eye. "Hitchhikers of the Appalachians. Their secrets await." I picked it up, the paper crinkling in my hand. It was an invitation to a local gathering discussing the myths. I felt a tingle of curiosity mixed with dread. I could learn more. Maybe I'd find answers. That night, I attended the gathering, a small room packed with locals. They spoke animatedly about encounters, exchanging tales of things glimpsed but never fully understood. I listened intently, jotting down notes. An old man with wild white hair, recounted his own brush with a hitchhiker. His face was drawn, eyes darting around the room. "I got picked up once by a man who grinned like he had a dark secret," he said, voice trembling. "He disappeared right before my very eyes when I drove past a giant oak." A chill settled in the room, and I felt it wash over me. But something worse happened. Halfway through, I realized a woman was staring at me from the back of the room. Her expression was intense, a mix of concern and something else I couldn't read. As she approached, the air thickened, and I could feel the weight of her gaze. "Are you toying with things you don't understand?" she asked. "What do you mean?" I replied, feeling exposed. Before she could answer, the lights flickered and a wave of cold air swept through. The whispers swarmed again, muddled and frantic. Anxiety rose in my chest like a tidal wave. I had to get out of there. I excused myself and rushed outside, breathing heavily. That's when I saw it. A figure standing near the edge of the woods, just out of the light. My heart pounded. It was a hitchhiker. The familiar grin danced beneath the shadows. Instincts kicked in and I backed away. The woods loomed behind him, dark and menacing. I was caught in the crossfire of curiosity and terror. "What do you want?" I shouted, adrenaline pumping through my veins. The figure merely tilted its head, and the whisper returned, clearer now. "You've come to find us. But what will you give in return?" I stumbled back, fear exploding in my chest. I was in deeper than I thought. I stumbled backward, feeling the dim light fade as shadows crept closer. My mind raced, heart thrumming loudly in my ears. "What will you give in return?" The voice bled through the air, thick and tangible, just like the fog rolling in from the woods. I blinked, trying to focus. The hitchhiker, that grin wide and unsettling, seemed to expand into the darkness. I wanted to run, but a feeling rooted me to the ground. Was it fear? Or something else? Deeper. In a moment of hysteria, I shouted again, "I don't have anything for you." My voice echoed in the stillness. The figure remained silent, but I felt the atmosphere shift. It was as if the woods inhaled, their presence looming larger. Suddenly a sharp cry pierced the air. I turned, heart racing, my pulse thrumming in my neck. A group of people from the gathering rushed toward me, their faces pale, eyes wide. "We saw him too," one of them gasped, breathless. "What did he say?" I hesitated, my mind clouded with confusion. He asked what I would give in return," I stammered, the weight of the encounter crashing over me anew. I glanced back at the figure, but it was gone, just emptiness and treetops swaying in the wind. The others huddled close, their eyes darting around as if the darkness might swallow them whole. "We need to leave," another voice murmured, trembling. "It's not safe here." I nodded, feeling a surge of agreement. The fears of the old man at the gathering and the woman's warning flooded back. Whatever this was, I had stepped too far into a realm that twisted my understanding of reality. As we turned to leave, I caught sight of a glint in the underbrush. I bent down quickly, pulling an object into the light. It was a small hitchhiker's signpost, weathered and worn. "Lost" was scratched across its surface, almost as if it were begging for attention. I held it tightly, feeling its roughness against my skin. "What's that?" someone asked, peering over my shoulder. I don't know," I stammered, pocketing it. It felt wrong to let it go. Before we could move, the air thickened again. The whispers grew louder, swirling around us. "The lost are waiting. Their stories hunger for truth," they murmured in unison, a chilling chorus of disembodied voices. I shuddered at the realization that we weren't alone anymore. We hurried back toward the building, but the shadows seemed to shift with us as if the woods were alive. A branch snapped, and we froze. Something was trailing us. I could feel it, an unseen weight lurking just behind our group. "Run!" I yelled, breaking into a sprint, adrenaline surging through my veins again. We dashed toward our cars, the whispers intensifying, echoing our fear. As I fumbled for my keys, I glanced back one last time. The figure stood at the tree line, just out of reach, watching. The grin was gone, replaced by a somber face, hollow and sorrowful. The engine roared to life and I shot down the road, panic coursing. I gripped the wheel, the hitchhiker sign pressing into my pocket like a carved talisman. I didn't know where this path would lead me, but something told me I had awakened a deeper mystery, and I couldn't ignore the feeling that the woods were waiting for my return. The next morning I woke up to the sunlight streaming through my window, but the remnants of last night's terror still clung to me like dew on grass. I sat up slowly, replaying the events in my mind and trying to make sense of them. The group at the gathering, the figure in the woods, and the haunting whispers, they felt like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that never quite fit together. I could still feel the hitchhiker sign against my leg. It was a tangible reminder that what I'd experienced was real, and I knew I couldn't just forget about it. A strange urge pushed me to find answers, to uncover whatever secrets lay hidden in those woods. I grabbed my phone and messaged a few of the others who had been there, hoping they would feel the same pull. Maybe we could figure this out together. Most of them read my messages but didn't respond. It was frightening how quickly the unexplainable silence settled in. Their fear mirrored my own. Maybe they were all too shaken to revisit that night. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the figure wanted something from me. I needed to face it again. I decided to drive back to the gathering spot. As I approached the area, the trees loomed overhead like sentinels. The atmosphere was thick and heavy. This time, however, I wasn't alone. A couple of friends from the group joined me, their expressions a mix of curiosity and dread. Once we reached the edge of the woods, that familiar chill swept over me. I shared everything I had seen and heard, gesturing toward the trees. "We can't just ignore this. It's still here," I insisted. "I don't think we should go in," one of my friends said, glancing nervously at the tree line. "What if it's too dangerous?" I felt the urge rise within me. What if we can help? We have to understand it. We can't let whatever that was just linger. Reluctantly, they agreed. We ventured deeper into the woods, each step punctuated by the crackle of twigs beneath our feet. I felt my heart race, not from fear, but from the anticipation of answers. The light shifted as the branches closed in around us. Then I stumbled upon something else. Nestled among the roots of an ancient tree was a small wooden box. It was weathered like the hitchhiker sign, but somehow more ornate. Intrigued, I leaned down and opened it. Inside were tiny trinkets, broken watches, faded photographs, and bits of string. Items that seemed to tell the stories of the lost. "That's when I saw it," I whispered, pointing to a photograph that showed a young woman smiling under the sun. Her eyes seemed to follow me. Something about her felt hauntingly familiar. "What is this place?" one of my friends asked, the worry in her voice clear. I couldn't answer. My pulse quickened as the air grew colder. The whispers returned, swirling around us, filling my ears with their desperate pleas. "Remember us," they seemed to say. "Help us." Before we could process it, the ground beneath us trembled. The trees started to sway unnaturally, and a figure emerged from the shadows. It was not the hitchhiker this time, but a woman. The same one from the photograph, her expression somber and pleading. "Stay here with me," she uttered softly, her voice a blend of sorrow and urgency. I felt my legs freeze, fear flooding my chest as I realized I had just stepped deeper into the mystery. The woman stepped closer, her translucent form flickering like a candle in the wind. My friend stood frozen beside me, wide-eyed, not sure whether to run or stay. The whispers intensified, forming a chorus around us, echoing her plea. I opened my mouth to speak, but no sound came out. "Who are you?" I finally managed to ask, my voice trembling. My heart raced, drowning out everything else. Her gaze softened. "I need your help. They're trapped," she whispered, her eyes darting to the shadows behind her. There was something in her tone that sent shivers down my spine, a mixture of urgency and despair. "Trapped? Who's trapped?" I couldn't grasp it. The words felt heavy in the air, weighted with meaning I couldn't comprehend. From behind her I caught a flicker of movement. Figures emerged from the darkness, faint silhouettes made from shadows and lost stories. I felt my heart drop. It was like looking at a photograph fading with time, revealing the essence of those who had been lost to these woods. "They need to be remembered," the woman continued, her voice almost breaking. "You have to find the others. Bring them to the box." "Others? What others?" The knot in my stomach tightened. The atmosphere felt charged, like a storm was about to break. The whispers swelled louder, reverberating through the air. "Find us! Help us!" they chanted in a haunting rhythm, a desperate call for recognition. "We can't just leave them here," I pleaded, glancing at my friends. Fear had morphed into anger, pushing me to seek answers for the torment that hung like fog all around us. The woman raised her hand and the shadows shifted, revealing more faces. Faces of those we once knew, each one looking lost. I felt a pull in my chest, an ache that resonated with my memories. I recognized some of them but couldn't place where from. Suddenly a sharp crack echoed through the woods like a warning. The surrounding trees creaked ominously, the branches shaking. I could sense something dark lurking just beyond the edges of our vision, something that didn't want us to remember, something resentful of our discovery. "We have to go," my friend suddenly yelled, panic flooding his voice. He grabbed my arm, pulling me back. "We can't help them. We don't belong here." "But what if we do?" I pushed back, glancing at the ghostly woman, hoping for more clarity. "What if this is why I felt drawn here?" Before I could finish, the ground shook violently, and the air thickened with static. The shadows surged forward, beckoning me to step closer. Just then, everything went dark. I felt the world slip away, the warm sun turn to icy gloom. "No!" I shouted, breaking free from my friend's grasp. I was drawn to the woman's fading figure, willing myself to remember, to help. As the darkness consumed me, I felt a surge of energy. Questions flooded my mind. What if my deepest fears were tied to these woods? What if there was a reason I had come here, Then, just as abruptly as it started, the darkness lifted and I found myself alone, staring at the wooden box. Empty. The whispers had faded, and the figures were gone. Panic swelled in my chest. I couldn't just leave now. That's when I noticed something glinting inside the box. A small key, intricately carved and shining against the dark wood. My fingers trembled as I reached for it, realizing it was a clue to something even deeper. I had to uncover the truth before it was too late. The key felt cold in my palm, a stark contrast to the heating panic bubbling inside me. What did it unlock? Part of me wanted to sprint back and grab my friends, but some deeper instinct told me I was meant to do this alone, at least for now. I glanced around. The woods were eerily quiet, the whispers completely gone. It was as if the trees were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. My heart raced. I shoved the key into my pocket and took a deep breath, steeling myself against the dread creeping up my spine. Moving carefully, I ventured deeper into the woods, intent on finding answers. The underbrush was thick and branches snagged at my clothes, as if trying to keep me from proceeding. I half expected to see the ghostly woman again, to guide me, but all I saw were shadows shifting with every gust of wind. Then I stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood an old weathered cabin, its door slightly ajar. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but curiosity won out. I had to see what was inside. As I approached, I noticed more carvings on the door, similar to those on the key, symbols that whispered of forgotten histories. I pushed the door open slowly, its creak echoing through the silence. Inside, it was dark and musty. Dust motes danced in the faint light filtering through the grimy windows. There was furniture covered in sheets, remnants of lives once lived. I stepped further in, heart pounding, my senses on high alert. In the corner of the room, I spotted a chest, much like the one I had just found in the woods. The symbols carved into its surface were identical to those on the key. Could it be? I approached it carefully, suspicion gnawing at me. My fingers fumbled for the key in my pocket. Questions flooded my mind. If I unlocked this chest, what would I find? Would it offer answers, or would it unleash something far worse? But I had come too far to turn back now. As I inserted the key, a low rumble echoed from within the chest. My heart raced, and just as I turned the key, I felt a gust of wind swirl around me. The air grew colder, chilling my bones. I hesitated for a heartbeat, but desperation pushed me forward. I turned the key. The lock clicked and the chest popped open suddenly, as though it had been waiting for this moment. Dust flew into the air, stinging my eyes. And then everything went still. My breath caught in my throat as I leaned closer, peering into the chest's dark interior. What I found inside sent a shock through my body. It wasn't just relics or trinkets, it was pictures. Familiar faces stared back at me. But there was something wrong. They were all people I knew, people who had vanished from our town, persons lost over generations seemingly without a trace. Each one looked eerily forlorn, like the figures I had seen in the woods. Before I could react, a chilling voice broke the silence, echoing through the cabin. "You shouldn't have come here." Terror gripped me and I spun around. But the cabin was empty except for the shadows lurking in the corners. I felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on me. I backed away slowly, heart pounding wildly. Then I noticed something moving in my periphery. Shadows began to shift in a way that felt alive. I was not alone. I needed to escape. But as I turned toward the door, it slammed shut. Panic twisted my gut. I banged against it, but it wouldn't budge. Suddenly the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. "Help us. Remember us." They spiraled around me, drowning out my thoughts as darkness crept in again. This couldn't be happening. I had to figure this out, or I might never leave these woods. The cabin began to close in around me. The whispers pulsed like a heartbeat, filling the air with desperation. I pressed my back against the door, trying to steady my breathing. Fear and confusion twisted in my chest as I scanned the room, searching for a way out. Suddenly the shadows aligned, forming vague shapes that flickered at the corners of my vision. I felt a pull, a strange compulsion to step closer to the chest, but I resisted, paralyzed by the sensation that whatever force was within those walls was far older and far more powerful than I could comprehend. Then I noticed a flicker of light beneath the floorboards. It glowed softly, pulsing like a distant star. The light seemed to beckon, filling the dark cabin with warmth. I took a tentative step toward it, curiosity winning out over fear. As soon as I approached, the light intensified, revealing more details on the floor. A trapdoor barely visible, covered by years of dust and neglect. I knelt down, heart racing. What could be down there? Was it another layer of secrets, or a way to escape this nightmare? My fingers brushed against the edge of the door. The whispers surged again, this time a chorus of pleading voices. "Help us. Find us." They swirled around me, growing louder, filling the air with their sorrow. I hesitated, torn between wanting to flee and the weight of those lost souls pulling me in. I couldn't ignore them. I had to know the truth. I clawed at the door, grit and grime falling away as the hinges creaked open. A hollow cavity yawned beneath me, the light now blinding. I had to go down. Mustered courage surged through me as I grabbed the edge of the door. I swung it open with all my strength and took the first step into the unknown. It felt like stepping into another realm, the air thick and suffocating as I descended into a dimly lit passage filled with shadows. At the bottom, I found myself surrounded by remnants of old human lives, pictures, letters, and more haunting faces staring back. They were pinned to the walls like a macabre gallery, their eyes pleading for acknowledgement. My pulse quickened as I recognized more faces. Friends, relatives, missing people echoing through time. Then I felt a touch on my shoulder, a cold, gentle pressure. I whipped around, eyes wide. A figure materialized from the shadows, barely discernible at first. It was the ghostly woman from the woods. Her face was sad, yet familiar, her eyes filled with the agony of unfulfilled stories. "You have to help us," she whispered. "This is just the beginning." I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. I was frozen, fear paralyzing me as I waited for what would happen next. I stole a glance back at the passage I had just entered. The way I had come was darkening, sealing me in. I had to make a choice quickly. I could press forward into the unknown with the woman beside me, or I could look for another exit and run, abandoning the chance to uncover the truth. Before I could decide, the whispers crescendoed into a wail that filled the cramped space. Remember us. Remember us. The shadows writhed, and I cursed my fear for freezing me in place. I had to act. Then everything went dark. I blinked, struggling to make sense of the darkness that engulfed me. Cold air rushed into my lungs, sharp and stinging. My heart raced, each beat echoing in my ears. Was I still in the passage, or had I crossed into another world? I reached for the walls, feeling the rough texture of the wood beneath my fingertips. I turned slowly. The shadows wrapped around me like a shroud, but I could sense the ghostly woman was still there, close by, waiting. "Stay with me," she murmured, her voice slicing through the silence. The faint glow returned, softening the edges of the darkness, casting long shadows that danced like restless spirits. "Where are we?" I managed to ask, though I dreaded the answer. "This is where they lost their way," she said, her gaze distant. "You need to understand what happened." Before I could ask more, I felt a pulse of energy in the air, a sudden chill that sent shivers racing down my spine. I spun around, scanning the dimness. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and menacing. It was a man, but his features were obscured, a blur of darkness with only his eyes glinting like shards of glass. "Who are you?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. But he didn't answer. Instead, he extended a hand, beckoning me closer. I felt a tug in my gut, a desire to approach, but I forced myself to stand firm. "What do you want?" The woman stepped forward, her pale hand blocking my path. "Don't listen to him. He's here to manipulate you. You have to make a choice." A choice. I felt the weight of the situation pressing down on me like a lead blanket. The whispers grew louder again, chilling me to the bone. "Join us. Free us." "What do you mean?" I shouted, desperate for clarity. "Free you from what?" His figure shifted, becoming more defined. I could see anguish etched on his face. "They suffocate in regret. You can help them find peace, or you can turn away and join the silent ones." The choice twisted like a knife in my gut. I thought of the faces on the wall, the stories trapped within those shadows. I couldn't just turn my back on them. But at what cost? "Please," the woman urged. "The door will close soon. You need to decide." Then, suddenly, a bright flash lit up the passage, blinding and overwhelming. I shielded my eyes, instinctively taking a step back. When the light faded, the man was gone. The woman stood alone before me, her expression fraught with urgency. "That's when I saw it," she whispered, pointing at the wall behind me. My heart dropped as I turned. A large, ancient keyhole glimmered in the fading light. The door threatened to shut forever. I could choose to unlock the secrets behind that keyhole and risk everything, or I could flee and leave the unanswered questions behind. I felt the pull of the light drawing me in, a promise of truth and danger. With my breath caught in my throat, I made my decision. I leaned toward the keyhole, but just as I was about to reach out, a shrieking wail erupted from the walls, and everything went black again. When the darkness finally lifted, I found myself back in the passage, but everything felt different. The oppressive silence was gone, replaced by an unsettling buzzing sound that echoed around me. My hands trembled slightly as I groped the familiar rough wood. I wasn't sure where I was meant to go now. "Hello?" I called out, hoping that I wasn't alone. My voice echoed back, bouncing off the walls, but there was no answer. The ghostly woman was nowhere in sight, and I felt a sudden weight of despair settle over me. The decision I thought I'd made had vanished, leaving me feeling aimless and lost again. I stepped forward cautiously, half expecting the shadows to shift and envelop me once more. Instead, I found something unexpected, a glimmering object on the ground. I knelt down to examine it. A silver key, ornate and gleaming, lay nestled in a bed of dust. I picked it up, feeling its cool weight in my palm. "What now?" I whispered to myself. The key felt significant, but it brought more questions than answers. Where was the door it belonged to? My mind raced back to the keyhole I had seen. Where had it gone? As I rose to my feet, a cold draft gusted through the passage, raising the hairs on my arms. The buzzing intensified, transforming into a whispering cacophony. "Return, return," it urged, echoing around me. I shivered, my anxiety spiking. I scanned the walls again, the flicker of the ancient keyhole flashing across my mind. It had to be nearby. I turned and started walking, the whispers growing more insistent, reverberating off the wooden surfaces. It felt like the passage itself was coming alive, urging me forward. Then, to my shock, I spotted a flicker of light in the distance. I hurried toward it, my heart pounding in my chest. The glow grew stronger, illuminating the passage ahead, and as I approached, I saw that it was indeed a door. A heavy wooden door, completely ornate, but this time it had no keyhole. Instead, it was adorned with intricate carvings that seemed almost to twist and writhe as I stared at them. "Is this it?" I asked, hesitation creeping into my voice. Suddenly, the whispers morphed into a single voice, deep and resonating, echoing through the chamber. "Unlock the truth." With trembling hands, I pulled out the key and approached the door. I hesitated, recalling the shadows and the man's warning. What if this was another trap? Just as I was about to fit the key into the door's lock, an icy grip seized my shoulder. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. I turned slowly, my heart racing, and met glowing eyes that pierced through the gloom. "Don't you dare open that door," a voice hissed, filled with rage. The figure stepped closer, shrouded in darkness, its lips twisting into a menacing grin. I stumbled back, my pulse pounding in my ears. I was no longer alone in this passage. The danger was very much real, and it was staring right at me. What had I stumbled into? With my pulse racing, I gripped the key tightly. I had to choose. Unlock the door and face whatever was waiting on the other side, or confront the very real threat in front of me. Time was running out again. I barely had time to gather my thoughts before the looming figure took a step closer, its menacing grin sending a wave of panic coursing through me. "You think you can save them?" the voice taunted, dripping with contempt. "You don't even know what they are." The whispers swirled again, enveloping me, their urgency gaining momentum. I could feel the pull of the key in my pocket, the weight of the truth I had yet to confront. I was at a crossroads I never wanted to reach, and whatever lay behind that door felt both terrifying and necessary. "Unlocking the door won't change anything," the shadow spat, its eyes narrowing into slits. "The lost are meant to remain lost. You'll just join them." Fueled by anger and fear, I met its gaze, desperation igniting a flame in my chest. "I won't let more stories fade into the shadows. I won't." I snapped my attention back to the door. The intricate carvings pulsed beneath my fingertips, almost alive, as if awaiting my touch. The box I found in the woods, the faces pinned on the wall, they all led to this moment. "Help!" The whispers turned into an anguished wail, drowning out the dark figure's jeers. A fleeting moment of doubt passed through me, and I tightened my grip on the key. Time was running short. "Step away from the door," the figure snarled, lunging at me. I barely had time to react. I turned, aiming the key towards the lock even as dread coursed through me. It wanted to scare me into submission, but I had seen too much. I could not be a passive observer any longer. Suddenly, I turned the key in the lock, twisting with all my strength. The door creaked open with a heavy groan, and a blast of warmth flooded out, contrasting sharply with the cold fear wrapping around me. Light spilled into the darkness and illuminated the space beyond. "No!" the figure screamed, but I didn't give it a second thought. I surged through the door, propelled by a mixture of fear and determination, not bothering to look back. I emerged into a vast chamber filled with ethereal light, brighter than the sun yet somehow soothing. The air was thick with the feeling of lost souls, their stories and their pain swirling in waves, yet hopeful. This was their realm, a bridge connecting their sorrow to the living. "Welcome," a voice resonated, soft and welcoming. A multitude of gentle figures flickered into view. It was the ghostly woman again, surrounded by others I recognized from my visions, the faces that had haunted me. Each one looked at me with a blend of recognition and sorrow. "You came," she said, her voice warm as sunlight. "You unlocked the truth." As the shadows of the past began to merge with the light, I felt a surge of understanding wash over me. "I want to help," I said, the words tumbling out clumsily. "Remember us," she urged, her hands reaching for mine. "Share our stories. They are our lifeblood." I instinctively understood. This was more than just revealing secrets. It was about remembrance, healing, a connection bridging their lost moments with my living world. The key, the understanding, the truth unlocked a door between our realities. But just then, like a howling wind, the figure surged through the door behind me, darkness colliding violently into light. "You can't escape," it roared, face contorting in fury. "You don't belong here." The chamber shuddered, filling with chaos as the light flickered. I felt a rush of fear, but also a newfound strength. "I won't let you take their stories," I shouted, stepping to the forefront. The ghostly figures rallied around me, launching forward, pouring their essence into the confrontation. As they pressed against the darkness, it began to waver, faltering under the weight of everything it tried to claim. "Help us!" The voices soared, creating an anthem, a harmonious plea that radiated pure energy. The figure shrieked, the sound echoing into shrill despair, as I stood firm. Light erupted, engulfing everything in a blinding flash. The shadows writhed in agony, loosing their grip as the truth surged forth, tethering the lost souls to the living. And just like that, the darkness imploded, dissolving into whispers. I shielded my eyes against the glare, something shifting inside me as I felt their stories intertwine with my heart. In the stillness that followed, I found myself back outside the cabin, bathed in sunlight pouring through the trees. I blinked in disbelief. The woods felt different now, lighter. The air tingled with an electric energy, as if the very ground was humming a tune of reconciled truths. But as I glanced around, I couldn't shake the feeling of unfinished business. The echoes of the lost remained a part of me, lingering like shadows. Some questions remained unanswered, deep-rooted mysteries in the woods beyond. I took a deep breath and positioned the weathered hitchhiker sign in my pocket, a reminder of all I had encountered. I still didn't know the full extent of what I had awakened, or whether I had truly disrupted the balance of the supernatural. But one thing weighed heavily on my mind. There were still stories out there waiting to be told. I turned back towards the trees, a mix of unease and resolve thrumming through me, a sense of purpose igniting within. I couldn't ignore their call. Even if some truths were shrouded in mystery, I was ready to discover them, step by step. Something within me took root, a desire for answers that would refuse to be silenced. I moved forward, not away from the woods, but deeper into them. I had much to learn, and there were still secrets hidden within those shadows, longing to be unveiled. The journey had only just begun,